Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to be talking with an expert on family businesses, family-owned businesses, which, is quite a few people that are in our audience. And it's just a fascinating topic. So please join me in welcoming Jan Southern to our program today. Welcome, Jan. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. I am great. I'm in Houston, Texas, and it's sunshiny. So, how can you not be great?
I know. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's raining here. So it's always fun when it does that, right? But let me tell people just a little bit about you, and I will, and then we will go from there. So Jan Southern is a certified exit planning advisor, a CEPA, and business advisor for Ferguson Alliance in Houston, Texas. The Alliance is a boutique family advisory firm with clients throughout the U.S. Jan has a remarkable talent for guiding businesses through managing process improvement and creating a culture of continuous improvement. One of her most memorable success stories involves a family-owned business that was struggling to stay afloat. Through her strategic approach, she not only helped them streamline their operations, but also instilled a mindset of continuous growth and innovation. This transformation led to a significant improvement, showcasing Jan's ability to balance flexibility with structured processes. Jan can help family business owners turn challenges into opportunities for lasting success. So again, Jan, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Great.
What we do at Ferguson Alliance, oh, I'm sorry, go
Oh, no,
ahead.
that's okay. Well, I was going to say first, tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you are today, and then we'll go into real detail.
Sure. Well, I was a consultant
Mhm.
working with banks and credit unions for
Mm,
42 years.
mhm.
And so, in that role, I did a lot of business process
Right.
optimization, a lot of
Mhm.
continuous improvement projects. And so once I retired from there, I thought I would, just go off into the sunset. And I figured out I didn't want to do that. And so for 42 years, I
Mhm.
had gone through and helped just banks and credit unions.
Mhm.
We did a few other types of
Mhm.
companies, but not a lot. We did
Mhm.
power companies. We did a few insurance companies,
Mhm.
but primarily it was banks and credit unions.
Okay.
And so in that, I saw a lot of family-owned businesses
Mhm.
who struggled
Right.
because sometimes in a family-owned business they have a little bit of struggles here and there between family members, but
Mhm.
primarily they just need a little coaching
Mhm.
along the way.
Mhm.
And so once I decided that I wasn't ready to hang up the shingle, as so to speak,
Mhm.
I found Ferguson Alliance.
Mhm.
And Rob Ferguson was expanding his company, he kind of was like me, had retired
Mhm.
and decided, nah, that wasn't in the cards for
Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
And so he's expanding his business. Um, One of the things that I, in my old age, decided to do was go get a CEPA
Ah.
um,
Mhm.
certification,
Mhm.
which was really a lot of fun. I'm a true believer in the fact that if you continue to learn,
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
your life will be more
Right.
enriched. And
Right.
so here
Mhm.
I am.
I love it. I
And
love
that's
it.
how I got to Ferguson Alliance.
Mhm. Well, tell us more about specifically what Ferguson Alliance does.
What we do is we help small and mid-sized, excuse me, small and mid-sized companies, family-owned businesses only, to grow, or if they decide what they want to do, they want to exit the company or they want to pass it down to their children, we can help them make that decision
Hmm.
because a lot of times they think they're ready to retire and then like me and like Rob,
Hmm.
they decide that really that wasn't what I wanted to
Hmm.
do. They're not ready.
Hmm.
And so if they continue to believe that that's what they want to do to pass it on to the next generation, we help them go on a journey. It takes about 3 to 5 years to make
Right. Hmm.
everything ready
Hmm.
and get everything in order. And so a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to retire next year. And that's really not the approach to
Hmm.
take. And so we help them to get ready to pass it
Hmm.
along to either one of their family members, or sometimes they determine that they don't want to shut down the business, but they
Hmm.
want to pass it along to someone. They
Right.
bring them in, they
Hmm.
groom them to take over,
Hmm.
and we help them along
Hmm.
that journey as well.
Right.
So if they do decide what they want to do is exit, and we can help them to prepare for that route.
Hmm.
And we can also, in some cases, find them a suitor
Hmm.
who will buy the
Hmm.
company or help them to dissolve. So there's a lot of
Hmm.
different approaches that can be taken. And that's kind of what we do is help them along that path.
I love it. And there's certainly a lot of challenges. I've talked with people before, and one of the biggest things that they say is the actual valuation of the business, right? Because the person who put blood, sweat, tears, everything they had into it for decades always values it much higher than what the true market value is. And so how do you deal with that?
Well, that is one of the huge things that we do is to
Hmm.
help them realize what is the right
Hmm.
valuation for
Hmm.
their company. And so we can also help them in changing that, making that a higher value.
Okay.
What we find a lot is exactly what you said. They've put their own blood, sweat, and tears in it for years and years and
Hmm.
years. And when they decide that they wanted to figure out what is the value of their company, they think it's 10 million and
Right.
maybe it's two,
Hmm.
you know. But part of that is to realize that, hey, I'm John Doe and I have all of the relationships.
Hmm.
I have
Right.
all of
They are the business.
they are the business.
Hmm.
So what is it that someone else can buy?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
when you leave, you take the business with
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
And so we have some questionnaires, we have some
Hmm.
things that we will go through with them to help them move the needle on that, if you
Hmm.
will, so that they can either have someone come in and help them do that, which is a lot of what I
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is that they need to recognize that those relationships need to be moved to someone else,
Hmm.
or they need to make introductions
Right.
to
Hmm.
the people with whom they're the ones that
Hmm.
have the relationship. And
Hmm.
so they build that relationship with
Hmm.
others in the company.
Hmm.
And so that alone can help increase the valuation of
Hmm.
the company. We have a scale that we use
Hmm.
from 1 to 6.
Hmm.
And using a 1 to 6 scale, there's no normal. There's no
Right. There's
middle.
not a middle. Hmm.
There's not a middle. You're either under the points that you need to
Hmm.
increase the value of your
Hmm.
company, or you're over.
Right.
And so, if you're a 3, you're a little bit under where you need
Hmm.
to be. If you're a 4, you're a little bit over.
Hmm.
And so we help them go through that through a series of workshops.
Hmm.
We believe in moving things off of meetings and moving them into workshops. They're much
Hmm.
more productive.
Hmm.
And so, in helping them to recognize the valuation of their company, they can go through some of those exercises to
Hmm.
say, am I at a 2? How do I get to a 4?
Hmm.
Am I at a 1? How do I get to
Hmm.
a 4?
Right.
How do I even get to a 3?
Hmm.
And so that's basically the process to go through to help you decide, do you want to
Hmm.
grow and keep the company
Hmm.
and move it to a different place,
Hmm.
or do you just want to wind it down?
Hmm.
And that's a difficult
Right.
decision on
Hmm.
either side of the
Hmm.
fence. And so that's basically what we do with
Hmm.
the companies in the beginning. Then once they've decided sure I want to keep the company. I
Mm-hmm.
want to grow it. I want to keep this legacy. Maybe it's for my kids. Maybe they're not interested. Maybe it's for my grandkids and
Mm-hmm.
they'd love to get in there, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically the process that
Mm-hmm.
we go through.
What do you find are the biggest challenges to this situation?
It depends on whether or not they are what we call a family first business
Okay.
or a business first family.
Okay.
Those
So
are
explain that
two,
difference. Because it's two
okay, the
very
difference,
big differences.
it is a huge
Mm-hmm.
difference. It's like going to Atlanta or coming to Houston,
Mm-hmm.
when you
Mm-hmm.
decide to move. So, the pathway, if you're a family first business, is that is what is most important to you,
Mm-hmm.
is continuing that business because of the legacy,
Okay.
wanting that legacy to be passed along
Mm-hmm.
to your family. And also, besides that, is that when it comes time to really put in the work,
Mm-hmm.
is it more important to you to be able to spend time with your family and improve
Mm-hmm.
the valuation of your family life versus are you a hard hitter, a hard
Mm-hmm.
go-getter who oftentimes will miss Christmas, will miss Thanksgiving
Mm-hmm.
because something has to happen in the business, but not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a good solid family life
Mm-hmm.
and be a business first family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, where are your values?
Mm-hmm.
Neither one is better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one is more,
Right.
neither one is less
Mm-hmm.
valuable to you. It's you make that
Mm-hmm.
decision and then you operate based on those
Mm-hmm.
decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like you said, it's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
We have a client that we're talking with right now who, everything about their company is family,
Mm-hmm.
but they're a business first family
Ah,
where
okay.
everything that that family wants is for improvement of their businesses.
Okay.
And so, but they're very solid as far as a business
Mm-hmm.
and very as far as a family. And so, it's what you would think looking from the outside in is that they're a family first business. It's just the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Interesting.
Yes.
And I would imagine that you almost have to be a family counselor, right? To be able to deal with all of this because you've got the kids who don't care, the kids who really care a lot, the kids that are, I do not want my brother to take over. And wait a minute, my niece is more qualified, all of those things. So how do you deal with all those family dynamics? I
Sometimes
keep
you have
thinking
to.
of, I'm going to show my age. Falcon Crest, right? Do you remember watching like Falcon and all of those old, Dallas and all of those,
Yes.
Larry Hagman because those were true family businesses, right? And of course all the turmoil. Now, the turmoil was there on purpose, but it really is a lot of that drama that can be there.
So, excuse me, absolutely. And what you have to do sometimes is, if it's bad enough, you need to bring in
Mm-hmm.
someone who is a certified
Mm-hmm.
family counselor.
Mm-hmm.
You build a team
Mm-hmm.
where, when you're building that team, if those dynamics are present and those need to be worked out,
Mm-hmm.
you bring in someone who is truly qualified as a
Mm-hmm.
family counselor and you make them part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of executive coaching.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Rob Ferguson does. He does a lot of executive
Mm-hmm.
coaching, and believe me, there's a lot of drama
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
Oh yeah.
in those executive
Mm-hmm.
coaching sessions. And you find that, you're right. The niece is more qualified. And we had a case study when I was studying for my CEPA exam. And that one of those case studies was that everyone expected that the oldest brother,
Mm-hmm.
would take over the company. And they
Mm-hmm.
had all lived their entire life feeling that,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
oldest brother would take it over. He got up in the family meeting when the think time to hand over, and he said, Susie's going to take over because
Don't
she's
want it.
much
Mm-hmm.
more
Mm-hmm.
qualified than me. And,
Mm-hmm.
jaws dropped. But by the same token, she was the most qualified.
Right. Well, good
And
for
so,
him for
good for
recognizing
him
that,
and
right? Mm-hmm.
recognizing that,
Mm-hmm.
instead of taking the job,
Mm-hmm.
messing the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
up, and eventually would it still be there for her to
Mm-hmm.
take over when the
Mm-hmm.
time came?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question,
Right.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and besides that drama, once that drama is overcome,
Mm-hmm.
then you need to carry on about the business
Mm-hmm.
of making everything
Right.
as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my specialty.
Mm-hmm.
My specialty in the company is to work with them to start with.
Mm-hmm.
My whole thing is the day you open your company, you need to start on a continuous improvement
Right.
plan.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
really do.
Mm-hmm.
And people ask me, well, what is that?
Right.
And to me, it's empowering your employees,
Mm-hmm.
empowering your staff members
Mm-hmm.
as well as the management to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I, I've very often gone into companies who had a suggestion box.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after a
That
couple of
grew
years,
cobwebs and had lots of dust and
after a few years, there's nothing in it.
mm-hmm.
And the reason there's nothing in it is that every every idea that went in there
Mm-hmm.
was poo-pooed
Mm-hmm.
by
Right. So
leadership.
why would you even bother?
Why would you bother? In
Mm-hmm.
fact, sometimes people were looked down upon
Mm-hmm.
because of some of their
Mm-hmm.
suggestions. That's a good way to kill
Mm-hmm.
continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely kill it. You're right, cobwebs is
Mm-hmm.
exactly what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you need to recognize that everything in your company, the people who actually do the work, the
Mm-hmm.
closer you are to the work, the more they know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more they know what can be improved.
Mm-hmm.
Not every idea is going to be a great idea. Some
Mm-hmm.
of them are going to be out in left field, and you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking, what planet did they come
Mm-hmm.
from? But by the same token, probably 80 to 90% of those ideas
Mm-hmm.
are going to be at least ones that need to be solidly
Right.
considered
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and implemented.
Mm-hmm.
You can have tons of ideas, but if you don't implement
Mm-hmm.
them, they're just a nice little
Mm-hmm.
study on a shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the one thing that I think I see in companies that don't practice
Mm-hmm.
continuous improvement
Mm-hmm.
is that they get all these recommendations and they say, oh, yeah, we're going to have them and we have workshops and then it goes on the shelf and there
Mm-hmm.
it sits,
Right.
and that was just a waste of
Mm-hmm.
money, a waste of time and
Mm-hmm.
effort. And the worst thing is that the morale drops
Right.
because they
Yeah.
saw this
What a
light.
waste of time.
Exactly. They
Mm-hmm.
saw the light at the end of the tunnel and
Mm-hmm.
it was a train.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You
And
know,
it ran them over.
it
Um,
ran them over.
yeah. And so like we said, they're not going to give any more suggestions. Why should they bother?
Right.
And and of course the biggest companies and the ones that are the most successful are the ones that empower their employees.
Absolutely.
I'm here in Atlanta, and of course one of the biggest companies down here is Chick-fil-A. And I discovered through, talking with other people down here just how much the employees are empowered. Now, of course, we all love that, it's been my pleasure to serve you, that they all have to say. And I tease them if they don't. And then they're like, ah! But I also learned that if you as a customer ask for something that's not on the menu, they have to do what they can to do it. Now sometimes they can't, but what a friend of mine, and she would do this to them all the time, and she just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. She would order one chicken nugget, so she'd
Oh my
order a bunch of
goodness.
other stuff and then one chicken nugget. And she always got her one chicken nugget. Now sometimes they charged her a quarter, sometimes they gave it to her for free. I mean, all sorts of things. But those employees had the power to say yes.
That's
Not, we
great.
can't do that. They only come in fours and tens and whatevers, and all of those things. They would say yes. And when they had to say no, they also had to give an explanation. Even if it's just something, and I've done this before, right? Where you go through and you order the Big Mac and they say, ma'am, this is Burger King. And
And
I'm
that
like,
too.
oh,
Oops.
yeah, but yeah, it's about empowering your employees at every level. I mean, that really is
Absolutely.
is the thing.
Yes. And it's especially prevalent in middle management
Mm-hmm.
that they are not properly empowered.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to give someone, if
Mm-hmm.
you're going to trust them to manage employees,
Mm-hmm.
you need to trust them to make the right decisions.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, without empowering middle management,
Mm-hmm.
um, it is really a downer
Hmm.
for the people
Hmm.
who report to that person.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so, if you can start from the bottom up
Hmm.
and let that middle
Hmm.
management person make the decision,
Hmm.
I would say like
Hmm.
Chick-fil-A, that restaurant
Hmm.
manager would be someone who could block that one.
Hmm.
Um, I'm glad to know that. I like their breakfast potatoes. Maybe I'll order a breakfast potato at
I
two in the
know.
afternoon.
Yeah. Now, I think they might tell you that they couldn't fix it, but you never know, right?
You never know. It
Hmm.
might take too long
Hmm.
to cook it or
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
which makes sense. And I'd say, well, thank you for at least considering.
Right. Well, and or
You know,
giving you that option, ma'am, it will take us a little bit
exactly.
longer to do it. And then you
Right.
can say yes or no. Um,
Exactly. Exactly. And so, going on down that pathway of
mhm,
continuous improvement
mhm,
is basically if you're not doing that,
mhm.
then you may not survive
Right.
into the second and third
Mhm,
generations, because that's one of the big things in
mhm,
family owned businesses,
mhm,
is that it's very rare
mhm.
to find one. I found one the other day. I met this person at networking. She was in her seventh generation
Whoa.
as far as a bakery, and I told her, I said, you are a unicorn,
Mhm.
because it's very
Right.
unusual to even survive into the
Mhm,
fourth and fifth
mhm,
generations,
mhm,
much less the seventh.
mhm.
And so, that's what I ordered something from them because
Oh,
I
of
was so
course.
impressed,
Yeah. Yeah. You wanted to
and
continue supporting them. Mhm,
absolutely,
mhm,
absolutely. And so it's, and they have that continuous
mhm,
improvement. They can make the
mhm,
decision. They have two or three locations, and the person at a location can make a decision
mhm,
as to equipment.
mhm,
They say, hey, my equipment's out of date.
mhm,
I'm not being able to do what
mhm,
we as a company want to do.
mhm,
I want to order a new one. Boom, it's
mhm,
done.
mhm.
And so, those are the kinds of things. Of course, you have to deal with, finances and
Mhm.
budget, things of that sort, those
Mhm.
nasty words.
Right.
But they do have a budget, and within
Mhm.
that budget, they're allowed to
Mhm.
make those decisions.
Mhm.
And that's really the way that it needs to be done,
Right.
instead of having to wait weeks or months
Mhm.
for someone up the
Mhm.
chain to make the decision. And guess
Right.
what? Your customer service has
Mhm.
degraded
Mhm.
tremendously.
Right.
So, go ahead.
And of course, the worst thing is when somebody says, "Hey, what about?" And they're told, "Oh no, we've always done it this way." Right? It makes that,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I mean that's obviously, it should be said, but then it should be, but tell us what we might want to change.
Exactly. I tell my clients that is the very worst reason to
Mm-hmm.
do it that way
Mm-hmm.
today.
Mm-hmm.
You may examine all of your
Mm-hmm.
options, you may look at
Right.
everything, and
It
guess
might
what?
still be
That's
the
the
best
best way to
way.
do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's the best way to
Mm-hmm.
do it. But if you never look at
Mm-hmm.
another option, you'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work a lot in Washington, D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
and there's still carbon paper,
Mm-hmm.
you
Oh,
know?
I know. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Why in the world would you use
Mm-hmm.
carbon paper in today's
Mm-hmm.
environment where you can just reach over to your printer and make another
Mm-hmm.
copy?
Right. Or make a pretty
You know,
good picture with your phone. Mm-hmm.
exactly. An
Right.
excellent
Mm-hmm.
picture with your
Mm-hmm.
phone. And
Right.
so, I mean, those are the things that that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
interesting in the next
Mm-hmm.
4 years, is to see what our two little
Right.
geniuses figure out.
I know. Yeah, I think it
I'm
is definitely.
excited.
I've told people it's going to be bumpy, but it's going to be interesting. And
Exactly.
so and not to get political, there's always changes that need to be made, right?
Absolutely. No
Yeah.
matter who you
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
No matter who you
Yeah.
are.
Budgets need to be cut. Budgets need to be added to. I mean, all sorts of things like that. But of course, the biggest probably elephant in the room right now, is the whole AI situation.
Oh,
And,
yes.
because we do, there are still companies saying not going to buy into it at all. Well, they're not going to survive. I mean, that's going to
They're
be,
going to have to
yeah,
buy into
yeah,
it.
and whether and obviously there are some that maybe are small enough that they don't need it, but I'm a one person shop and I do AI and I'm wanting to get more and more into it, partially to free me up to do other stuff, right? um
Absolutely.
and but along those lines, those are the same companies that might be saying, but we're not going to have robotics. We're not going to, because that is all tied together. I do my paying business is I have a marketing firm, and I work primarily with senior living communities. And so I do their social media posts. And I just did one yesterday where they had all, gone off on an adventure. And I always call them adventures, right? So they'd gone off on an adventure to lunch, and a robot served them their wine. And then the robot, so there's these pictures of this robot. It's the cutest thing in the world. And then the robot went to the table next to them and had a birthday cake and sang happy birthday.
Oh my goodness.
The seniors just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. But, there is the novelty value of all of this, but there's also it didn't take away from, and I don't believe that AI takes jobs away. I think it frees people up to do other things.
Does.
And that's the thing I think people need to remember. So that freed up somebody from having to put down whatever they were doing, go out and sing happy birthday, go back and start again. Plus it was just really cute that it was a robot who did it.
Plus they had fun seeing it,
yes,
and they were
yes.
remembering it,
Right.
and so that's part of what I do also is do
Mhm.
reengineering
Mhm. Mhm.
in companies and talk about disruptive.
Mhm.
That can be
Right.
disruptive, and
Oh
some people
yeah.
say, well, what's the difference
Mhm.
between continuous improvement
Mhm.
and process
Mhm.
optimization or
Mhm.
process improvement,
Mhm.
business process reengineering,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it?
Mhm.
And basically, continuous improvement is every day you're looking for ways that I can do things more
Right.
efficiently
Mhm.
using AI.
Mhm. Mhm.
Going, I need to write a two-sentence
Mhm.
something for Deb Cryer,
Mhm.
you know, and so, you can go into AI and maybe it'll help you
Mhm.
bring in some ideas.
Right.
You may not like what it says, but
Mhm.
you may say, hey, that's a pretty good idea,
Right. I'm going to change this
or
a little bit, but
I'm going to change it a little
Mhm.
bit, personalize it to
Mhm.
me. But in process improvement or process optimization, we sit down with the Deb Creers. I
Mhm.
mean, you're a one person shop,
Mhm.
but let's say that I'm in a company and they have 500
Mhm.
employees. I might not sit down with all 500, or I
Mhm.
might, depending
Right.
on what they do. But
Mhm.
you sit down and you say, what do you do?
Mhm.
How do you do it? Why do you do it?
Mhm.
What do you do with it when you're finished?
Mhm.
Does it go to someone
Mhm.
else? What did they do with it? And if you
Mhm.
don't know, fine, no matter.
Right.
Um, but it's amazing what you find.
Mhm.
I was in a company one time, and someone, I'll call her Louise.
Mhm.
Louise is our favorite person. Louise had been doing this report for 20 years.
Mhm.
When she finished, it went into her bottom drawer. And I
Oh
said, well,
no.
who looks at it? I don't think anyone looks at it. I said, how long has it been since someone looked at it? And she said, oh, probably 10 years.
Oh,
But she'd
so
been doing this
right.
for 10 years and no one knew it. It
Mhm.
went into her bottom drawer. Every year she cleaned it out and put it in her archives. But that's just a
Mhm.
symptom of no one had ever mentioned to her that she had the ability
Right.
to quit doing it
Right.
or to
Or to at
say,
least say, should it be going somewhere other than my drawer?
yeah,
Right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
no one missed it. So,
Mhm.
Um, so it was amazing. It didn't take
Right.
her that long, but with 500 employees, how many
Mhm.
other reports like
Right.
that were there?
Right. Yeah. And so
It's
you're losing
amazing.
hundreds of hours worth of productivity.
And hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, and it's very disruptive to do
Mhm.
that because you have to sit down, take the time,
Mhm.
and we go into places where things like that go on all the
Mhm.
time. And the biggest sin in my mind is there's no documentation.
Right.
No one
Right. It's
knew.
it's just in somebody's head.
Exactly. No one knew what Louise was doing
Mhm.
because it wasn't documented. It wasn't
Mhm.
in her job
Mhm.
description. Or maybe it was. But
Mhm.
typically, what you find is that Louise started out in accounting.
Mm-hmm.
And then she transferred over to transportation,
Mm-hmm.
but no one knew how to do that report but Louise. So she took the accounting
She
report
still
with
did it.
her
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and went down in her drawer, and no
Mm-hmm.
one knew she was still
Mm-hmm.
doing it. And,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and then maybe she left transportation and went
Mm-hmm.
over to, to production
Mm-hmm.
and took the report with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you find that not only are people doing things
Mm-hmm.
that don't need to be done, or maybe it's being replicated. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
when she left the
Right.
department,
Somebody else started doing
somebody
it.
else was
Mm-hmm.
doing the report, and then
Mm-hmm.
it went to who it belonged to,
Mm-hmm.
but no one told Louise not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Well,
it's
and it was
very
job
interesting.
security for Louise to not
Oh,
say, "Hey, should I
absolutely.
still be doing this?"
Right, right. Or maybe Louise wasn't the kind of person who would ever pick her head up and ask that
Mm-hmm.
question because she
Right.
was afraid somebody wouldn't like it.
Right.
Who
Mm-hmm.
knows?
Yeah, they would say,
So
"Well,
it
why do
depends
we
on the
need you?"
culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's the culture needs to change to
Mm-hmm.
one of continuous
Mm-hmm.
improvement. But sometimes you have to do a process improvement or
Mm-hmm.
process optimization
Mm-hmm.
to get to the point
Mm-hmm.
where you find out, hey,
Mm-hmm.
all these things need to go away.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing that people think of when you say I'm going to do a process optimization is, oh my gosh, they're going to do cuts.
Right.
That
Yeah,
means
they're
that
going to
means that we're
not
going to
need
do a
me
RIF.
anymore. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been many occasions throughout my career that I said, you're understaffed.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot provide the customer service that you
Ah.
say you do
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have enough people,
Right.
And they're like, what do you mean I need to add staff?
Mm-hmm.
But
We
so
thought you were going to
often,
cut people. Mm-hmm.
right, but often you can say, hey, Louise doesn't need to be over here in production
Mm-hmm.
anymore because we took away half her job
Mm-hmm.
but guess what? She used to be in accounting and you're understaffed in
Mm-hmm.
accounting. Let's
Right. So
put her
let's
back
put her
there.
back. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not necessarily that you're going to cut staff.
Mm-hmm.
You're either not going to add
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to balance the staff
Mm-hmm.
and put it where it needs to
Mm-hmm.
be.
Right.
And so you'll be leaner and
Mm-hmm.
meaner and provide better customer
Mm-hmm.
service. You'll have people in the right
Mm-hmm.
places. You'll not be doing silly things that like that report that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's probably the most infamous thing I've ever found.
Well, and yeah, especially because nobody looked at it. I mean, it was, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I mean, come on. She had to have known it didn't need to be done, but no one ever told
Yeah,
her to quit doing it.
right. And that was
You
the
know,
thing. She had been told, Louise, you do this. So Louise did
absolutely.
it. Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. And a lot of people our age, I'm probably older than you, but a lot of people our age grew up in an era where you didn't question
Right.
things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
because you
know,
might lose your job.
Bob was the boss
Mm-hmm.
and what the boss said
Mm-hmm.
went, and
Mm-hmm.
Bob never came and told you,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that
Mm-hmm.
anymore. Didn't even know
Mm-hmm.
you were doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and so in that case, the CEO of the company was like,
Mm-hmm.
you must be joking.
Right. Yeah,
You
and
must be joking. And I
I'm
said,
sure it really was she was not the only one doing something like that. I
oh,
mean,
no, no,
yeah,
no.
I mean
That
that
was
and
probably the
mhm,
worst case, but
yeah. Hmm.
it's just it's just prevalent everywhere you
Hmm.
go. And you also find that they know there's a better way to do it,
Hmm.
but unless you've built that
Hmm.
culture of continuous
Hmm.
improvement and suggestion
Hmm.
box that doesn't have cobwebs on
Hmm.
it, no one speaks up.
Hmm.
They
Right.
don't speak up. They
Hmm.
know exactly how it needs to be done.
Hmm.
They know exactly
Hmm.
what could be more
Right.
efficient, less cost
Hmm.
effective, but they don't. They just come in,
Hmm.
they spend their 8 hours,
Hmm.
they keep their head down,
Hmm.
better to not
Hmm.
put your head up. It might get chopped off.
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
And so when you finish with one of these process optimization programs,
Hmm.
you need to have everybody in there know you have a voice.
Hmm.
You have a
Hmm.
voice that can be used. You
Hmm.
won't be ostracized.
Hmm.
You won't be criticized. They won't say,
Hmm.
oh, Louise thinks she can take
Hmm.
over the company now. That's not the attitude. It
Hmm.
needs to be that, hey, I got a great idea
Hmm.
and let's look at it,
Right.
you know?
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons I
Hmm.
retired from where I was is that I had a client
Hmm.
who and I've always remembered this. I had a client in Kansas City who said, "You know what that is, don't you?" And I said, "What?" She said, "That's a titwadi." And everybody goes,
Hmm.
"What?"
Yikes.
That is the way we've
Hmm.
always done it. But you know
Hmm.
what? Everybody remembers that word.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, we used to say if it's a titwadi, it probably needs to be thrown
Hmm.
away.
Right. Or
And
again, maybe it is the best way to do it, but you
maybe
need
it
to review
is.
it. Hmm.
Right,
Right.
exactly. But, and we used to, her company had, it was a bank, and they had
Hmm.
this big, the thing where you have a no across circle
Uh-huh.
with a no across it.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
had a titwadi and had a thing across that.
I
And
love
it
it.
was all over the bank,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it reminded
Hmm.
people that
Hmm.
don't do it that way
Hmm.
just because we've always done
Right.
it that way.
Right.
And so find a way to make it better,
Hmm.
find a way to make
Hmm.
it work better for
Hmm.
your company.
Right. I love that. Well, did you find that COVID, especially when people had to all of a sudden be out of the office and do things very different, did you find that that really changed a lot of dynamics?
Yes and no.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times it added to a struggle. If they
Hmm.
were already struggling with
Right.
something, it
Hmm.
added to the struggle. Um, and sometimes it had a complete renovation of
Hmm.
how they did things.
Right. Because they were forced to.
They were forced to. The
Hmm.
state of Massachusetts didn't give companies any notice.
Hmm.
They said Monday you're in the office,
Hmm.
Tuesday everyone must be at
Hmm.
home.
Hmm.
If you didn't have a VPN set up, if you didn't
Right.
have laptop
Hmm.
computers,
Hmm.
you couldn't function.
And it happened that way with many companies. I mean, my husband went to work on Friday and Monday he was home.
Right.
Now he was set up to be able to do that. But I talked to people months into COVID who said they still didn't even have a laptop or a desk, right? Remember when desks were one of the biggest things, your desks and toilet paper, because they had no, and now can you plan for that? No. I mean, now of
No,
course we
you
kind of
can't.
do, right? We're like, oh, what if something like that happens? But
Hmm.
um, but yeah, it was, but I think there were so many instances where I've talked to people where they have said, we have to do this differently. So how are we going to do it now?
Exactly.
And there were a lot
Exactly.
of positive changes.
There were tremendous positive changes. If nothing else, now people have a disaster recovery plan
Right.
that they did
Hmm.
not have. They
Hmm.
didn't think it was necessary, especially
Right.
in family businesses.
Hmm.
This is my business. I know
Hmm.
everything about it.
Right.
Well, what happens if you're not here tomorrow?
Hmm.
What are your
Hmm.
contingency
Hmm.
plans? What's your disaster
Hmm.
recovery plan? What
Hmm.
if you're in your home, and we were talking about storms earlier,
Hmm.
for some of your other customers,
Hmm.
your viewers, we're in the South and we have to deal with
Hmm.
nasty
Hurricanes. Hmm.
storms.
Hmm.
So, what do you do if you're in your office and a storm comes? You
Hmm.
walk out of your office and a tree falls and smashes
Hmm.
everything you have in your office.
Right.
Those things
Hmm.
can happen.
Hmm.
What's the plan?
Hmm.
How have you made your company
Hmm.
bulletproof or
Hmm.
tree proof in that
Hmm.
case?
Right. Right.
And so those things are important.
Hmm.
And that's part of the,
Hmm.
continuous
Hmm.
improvement,
Hmm.
optimization.
Right.
And so, now that guess what? Deb's office got smashed, but I have a backup and Jan
Hmm.
can do everything that Deb was
Right.
doing.
And
It's in
everything
a
was stored
different
on the
location.
cloud, so it was easy to access.
Absolutely. And so those are the kinds of things that we can help people
Hmm.
with. Family businesses are
Hmm.
notorious for not having that sort of
Right.
backup.
Because
You
it's just
know,
in somebody's head.
it's just in somebody's
Hmm.
head, or it's just in one computer. It's
Hmm.
not backed up to the
Hmm.
cloud.
Right.
And so those are the things
Hmm.
that they're critical.
Hmm.
They're critical
Hmm.
to continuation of
Hmm.
your business.
Right.
And so, those are some of the
Hmm.
things that we like to look at.
Hmm.
We talked about family dynamics
Hmm.
before. How do you convince um, how do you convince the matriarch or the
Hmm.
or the the person who has always done it a certain way,
Hmm.
and he's run his business and built it into a phenomenal
Hmm. Right.
business.
Hmm.
And so you're young whippersnapper, you're going to come along and tell me
Hmm.
what I need to be doing, but
Right.
they need to listen.
Hmm. Hmm.
They need to listen,
Hmm.
and they need to be coached
Mm-hmm.
into constant
Mm-hmm.
preparation.
Mm-hmm.
I tell a story, it's not a pretty one, but we had a marketing department in the company that I was with for 40 years. And one person did all of our external
Mm-hmm.
marketing and had all of the information on her computer.
Mm-hmm.
And she was driving back from vacation one day, and a drunk driver smashed into her and
Yikes. Mm-hmm.
killed her computer.
Oh no.
Yes, her computer was with her because
Mm-hmm.
she always took it because she was
Mm-hmm.
dedicated
Right.
and,
She would
somebody
work in the
might need
evenings
something.
and yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't backed up to
Mm-hmm.
the cloud, as was company
Mm-hmm.
policy. But you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Our marketing program died that day
Mm-hmm.
on the highway.
Right.
And so the only survivor was her dog, which was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's I think you have to prepare for those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things, and that comes with being a business
Mm-hmm.
first family
Right.
or a
Right.
family first
Mm-hmm.
business. Whichever you
Mm-hmm.
are, you still need to have those
Right.
contingencies in place.
Well, and it's kind of employees first, right? Because back to empowering and things like that, you need to let your employees, whether they're family or not, know that their job is secure. If
Yes,
they are the head sales dude, you still have to have all of your records where somebody else can get to them.
absolutely.
All of those various things. And it's not that we want access because we're going to take it from you. We just, it needs to be there safe and secure. One of the things that I used to do for my business was crisis management planning. And so we went to everybody in a company from the mailroom up to the CEO. Tell us what you do, and all of those various things. And I remember there was one where this was a company that had to deal with state and federal regulations a lot. And so there was, we're talking to this one person, and he said, well, I file a report once a month. And he was kind of like, yeah, no biggie. And we said, okay, so where do you file the report? Well, I file it with the state. Okay. If it's not filed, what happens? And he kind of got this perplexed look, and he said, well, we wouldn't be able to function. We wouldn't be able to continue to do business. And we went, oh, okay, well, that's
Minor
it.
detail.
Yeah. And we said, and who else knows how to do it? Well, nobody. And we said, okay, no, that needs to be fixed. You need to have at least one backup, if not more, because you might have had two of them going in a car somewhere, right? But the funny thing was, he really didn't think that his job was critical. His job was probably one of the most important things in that company.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
And
and
that leads back to the how do you approach all of the empowerment?
Mhm,
That guy needed
mhm,
to know how important he was.
right.
That absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to continue
hmm
to do business.
hmm Right, right. And it's about protecting everyone, right? Okay, so we're not trying to take your job away from you, but we're trying to make sure you continue to have a job.
Exactly.
And it is every level. I mean, there was one company that we dealt with where we determined that in essence, the mail room was one of the most critical functions because people were sending money and somebody needed to
Oh,
get that money and take that money and get it into the bank. Right.
that's right.
But for most people who were like, the mail room. Well, you
It's a
know what?
critical place.
It was. And it was really funny because the CEO of the company, at least once a month, if not more, would go down and chat with the people in the mailroom because he knew that they were connected with everything, right? Because when they were out delivering the mail to the various departments, they would chat with people.
And
And
they knew
so
everything.
they knew everything, and so he would go down and he would find out that, this department didn't feel that they had enough funding or this department, all these various things. And you never know, kind of where that's going to come from.
That's exactly right. That
Mhm.
is exactly right. And one of the things that I advocate is that when you're cross-training people,
Mhm.
that you make them switch jobs
Right.
with someone else,
Hmm.
at least for a week, a month.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's not always the same person. The best well-oiled machine is where, let's say you have 10
Hmm.
employees.
Mm-hmm.
if you had 10 employees and all 10 knew everyone else's job,
Mm-hmm.
just think how
At least
wonderful
the
that would be.
basics, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, to get
Mm-hmm.
through what
Mm-hmm.
had to be
Mm-hmm.
done. There might be
Right.
some nuances that
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to
Mm-hmm.
do,
Right.
and something can wait until
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to answer your
Mm-hmm.
question about COVID, I think that showed us, number one, what really was important and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But, some functions could go for weeks
Mm-hmm.
without being done and nobody missed them.
Right.
But other things have to get done every day.
Mm-hmm.
And like your guy, that had to be filed
Mm-hmm.
every month
Mm-hmm.
without fail,
Mm-hmm.
or they couldn't continue to
Right.
function,
Right. And so
And
what if
so,
he had gone home and had no computer, right?
right,
Mhm. Or
exactly.
got
You
COVID?
know,
Worse. Mm-hmm.
and some businesses are small enough
Mm-hmm.
that, overnight they can't afford to go buy 10
Mm-hmm.
laptops,
Right.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so what do they do? Do
Mm-hmm.
they haul the
Mm-hmm.
big computer home
Mm-hmm.
with them?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them had to do that,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but I think that that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things where you really find out what has to be done,
Mm-hmm.
what doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be interesting when they're finally being told they have to come back to the office.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
Houston is a good
Mm-hmm.
example, and Atlanta probably the same
Mm-hmm.
way. 20% of our office space is unoccupied right now.
Yeah,
And that's a
we've got quite a
huge
bit.
problem.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
that is a huge problem
Mm-hmm.
for if you're a family-owned businesses and you own a building and the building's unoccupied,
Right.
and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's not only unoccupied, but the people have let their leases
Mm-hmm.
lapse because they
Right.
say they don't need
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can really
Mm-hmm.
damage your budget and things of
Mm-hmm.
that sort. But it's interesting
Mm-hmm.
how that kind of reshaped
Mm-hmm.
the way that we do
Mm-hmm.
business in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
especially the
Mm-hmm.
smaller businesses.
Right.
And
Right.
so, it's a phenomenon that we didn't expect,
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't ask for,
Well, and it
but
was
I
only
think it
supposed to
improved
last two
everything.
weeks. Remember, that was what, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and
Right.
all of us went, no.
Yeah, I know. And it's still going on how many years later,
Right. Yeah. And
So,
it's I've been home based for many years. And so it didn't affect me, but I talk with a lot of people. And one of the things that, it allowed a lot of flexibility, right? Where people could, maybe they worked from 6 p.m. to midnight, but they were far more productive by doing that. All these various things. And like you said, we discovered, oh, that really didn't need to be done, or, all these various things. But I also think that being in person has the camaraderie effect, of,
absolutely.
yeah, being able to say, you and I were talking about it before that, we started officially doing the program. We're talking sports, and I mean, that always happens, or the weather, or, hey, we know that your kid was in this play last night. Tell us about it. And
Mhm.
all of that happens, and it doesn't happen nearly as much if we're doing remote. You can try and force it. I know companies who have done some of that, but it's still, it's not the same thing as just being able to say, hey, Jan, love your blouse today, right?
Yeah,
And all
exactly.
of those things. And and it's funny, I don't network anymore in person, and I've been to 2 in-person networking events in 4 years. And both times when I went back, I was like, ugh, I had to put real clothes on and shoes, and drive in Atlanta traffic. And but I also know that I am a social person, and I need that interaction with people. And so that's where it's very interesting. And it's funny, I also talked to people who were extreme introverts. I had a woman on the program, Summer Turner, who she actually she is an extreme introvert, and she works with companies on how to engage the introverts. And I asked her, I said, so I'm guessing this was great for you. And she said, no. She said it made it worse because she would, turn off her camera. She would not participate. I mean, she said it really made you even more introverted.
I can imagine because she was forced to come out
Right.
of her shell
Hmm.
when she
Hmm.
wasn't at
Right.
home alone.
Right. Hmm.
And it's so difficult for
Hmm.
people who can't
Hmm.
converse easily with
Hmm.
other people to be
Right.
forced into that,
Hmm.
but it's good for them,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know.
Right. And
My
there are certainly ways, and that's, one of the things to look at when you're looking at how businesses function. Do you have, it's, like a classroom, right? You've always got the kids in the front row that always participate. That was me, right? I was the suck up. And then you've always got the kids in the back that hope the teacher never notices them. And the
right.
same thing happens in business meetings. You've got the people who are always going to be chatty Cathy, and you've got the people who are never going to say anything, for whatever reason. Maybe they made the mistake of speaking up one time and were shot down, or that's just not what they want to do, all those things. And so that's part of that continuous improvement too, I'm guessing, is how do you kind of work through some of this? Maybe they're not going to speak in front of the room of even 20 people. So you go to them individually and you say, hey, Jan, you look like you were really thinking hard about X point. Did you have anything you
Hmm.
wanted to add about it?
Right. And that's where workshops really
Right.
benefit.
Hmm.
A meeting to me
Hmm.
is more or less, yeah,
Yeah,
you
you've
can
got the
have a
five
meeting.
kids in front, right? And everybody else.
Right,
Hmm.
right. And the people, that are always going to speak
Hmm.
up and the people that are never. But in a
Hmm.
workshop, you're more or less kind of
Hmm.
forced to. You go
Hmm.
around the table and you say,
Hmm.
let's talk about
Hmm.
what needs to go on the
Right.
whiteboard, and this is
Hmm.
yours, and this is yours, and this is
Hmm.
yours. And so that makes a big difference
Hmm.
because they have the opportunity to speak out and they're
Hmm.
not going to be shot down,
Hmm.
and because they're part of the team.
Right. Right.
And the old adage, there's no I in team, is so true.
Hmm.
And it's so true in working on things like
Hmm.
that. And if you're introverted you may have wonderful ideas, but
Hmm.
no one's ever going to know,
Hmm. Right.
and so that's where the benefit comes in of having workshops instead
Hmm.
of meetings where
Hmm.
someone gets up and presents something
Hmm.
to you. You go to a workshop and you're
Hmm.
telling
Hmm.
the person
Right.
who's running
Hmm.
the workshop what your ideas
Hmm.
are instead of the other way
Hmm.
around.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so that's where they're so much more effective than
Hmm.
meetings.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the ways that we at Ferguson
Hmm.
will run our even executive
Hmm.
coaching is a workshop
Hmm.
environment.
Hmm.
And it may be a one-person workshop,
Hmm.
it may be a two-person
Right.
workshop, whatever's appropriate.
Hmm.
But it's a series of 6 to 7
Hmm.
workshops, and you work through it, and you get
Hmm.
homework, and you have to do the things
Hmm.
that are going to increase the value of your
Hmm.
company or increase your ability to select the right
Hmm.
person to proceed
Hmm.
after
Hmm.
you. And so it's really a dynamic
Hmm.
that brings out those introverts.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the ways that we're going to find that it's very important to start bringing people
Hmm.
back into the
Right.
offices,
Yep.
to really get that
Hmm.
interface and really get the ability to
Hmm.
decide when somebody's sitting in
Hmm.
their office at home, they may be the best option that you have, but you're never
Hmm.
going to know it, because they're not going to speak up. They're going to turn
Right.
off their camera.
Hmm. Hmm.
I've sat through many Zoom meetings where the camera of certain people are
Hmm.
off, and only one person speaks up,
Hmm.
and you really don't get the
Right.
benefit
Or
of
you've got so
everyone on the
many
meeting.
that you've got 20 different faces, and then you've got another screen of faces, and
Right.
so yeah, I mean, and I love Zoom. We're on Zoom right now because it has allowed us to, I've interviewed people around the world, which I never could have done, before. I mean, when I first started doing this remotely, we used Skype, and but it was just audio. And to me, I love being able to see my guest. Now, granted, we do post the video and things like that, but there are times where we don't post. They will say, nah, I'm having a really bad hair day, or, whatever. And so we don't post. We obviously always have to post the audio, but I still like being able to see the person, even though
Right.
I know I'm getting a small snippet of them.
Hmm.
And so I love that. And of course, it's allowed us to have workers and clients from around the world. I mean, all those various things. But I think we just, we really do get so much more from in person.
Right, exactly, exactly. I used to work in Central America
Hmm.
in my works,
Hmm.
had we not had
Hmm.
Zoom, we didn't have Teams at the time.
Right. Hmm.
A lot of times for work meetings you
Hmm.
use Teams,
Hmm.
and had we not had Zoom, it
Hmm.
would have been very difficult
Hmm.
because sometimes weather or
Hmm.
whatever, your plane gets canceled,
Hmm.
and so you don't go, but you
Hmm.
carry on.
Hmm.
And we
Right.
could do just like you and I
Hmm.
are doing right now. We could have a process
Hmm.
improvement
Hmm.
project
Hmm.
going on, and I could be interviewing you to find out what
Hmm.
you do.
Right.
We
Hmm.
couldn't do that before we had Zoom.
Hmm.
And so,
Hmm.
I think it's technology is
Hmm.
something that everyone needs to
Hmm.
start using to better than they
Hmm.
do. Um, you know, I have really embraced technology throughout my
Hmm.
life, and so I'm thankful for that because I know people who just resist, resist,
Hmm.
resist, and they won't improve.
Right.
They
Right.
they just won't,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know.
we mentioned it before. AI is, of course, the big guy, and it's does it have its challenges? Of course, but it's getting better. I mean, we're working our way out of the days where you had to scream at the phone 900 times, person, person, right? And and all of those various things because it's of course learning more. I mean, it gets how many times have you gone on and done a little online chat and you're not talking with a real person, but their database of information is so big that the AI can generate some pretty good answers. Now I will admit sometimes I try and trip it up on purpose, but just to see if its little thing will short out. But yeah, I mean it's an incredible tool, and I think we're gonna and I mean 2 years ago we would have never had that discussion. But for the
Yeah,
people who say, "Oh, I won't use AI," I'm
they will.
sorry.
They're
Well,
already using it.
yeah, they get in their car and they say, "Siri, take me to X." And Siri
Yes,
gives you three routes. That's AI, folks. I hate to tell you that. You still have the ability to
exactly.
choose, but that was AI. Because she was she, he, it, all those various things. I have my voice as an Australian male.
Oh,
But but yeah, I mean it was, it is searching, it's finding the best route, it's finding, hey, there's I love it when it says
traffic
there's a
stops.
speed trap ahead. Okay, right.
Right,
And all those, but yeah, we've been using AI for years and we just weren't
right,
really recognizing it.
right. I was just testing, excuse me, AI the other day.
Hmm.
And I said, give me a 30-second elevator speech.
Hmm.
And so it gave me whatever. And I said, well,
Hmm.
that's not really
Hmm.
warm enough. I
Hmm.
want something that's warm
Hmm.
that will make someone feel good.
Hmm.
And it came back with a little bit shorter thing,
Hmm.
and it was very on point. It
Hmm.
was, said,
Right. It's
"Oh,
a
I'm
little
sorry,
scary.
I didn't realize what you wanted."
Hmm.
And so,
Hmm.
you know, it really is.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, probably more intelligent than we are. That's the danger
Yeah,
of AI.
that is this, pretty soon we're gonna have it saying how. Now is not the right.
Yes,
But I
exactly.
did one a couple weeks ago, and it was kind of the trend there for a little bit to ask AI based on your knowledge of me. Now you had to have been using it, right? Tell me about myself. And
Oh, that's
again,
interesting.
I was scared. It was scary what it said. And then I was able to, and so I said, oh, okay, well, and so I went down a little bit further. And now my problem is I'm like, ooh, rabbit hole, and
Right. Let's
but
go
yeah.
there.
Yeah, yeah, let's keep
Right.
going. Well, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, Jan, this has been so much fun. And, I look forward to the time when we chat again. But tell us more about Ferguson Alliance. How do they find you and what are the services that you guys provide?
Well, I found Ferguson Alliance on LinkedIn. They
Ooh.
were looking for, as I mentioned earlier, Rob was wanting to expand the company,
Mm-hmm.
and so they didn't have anyone who
Mm-hmm.
do the type of work that I
Mm-hmm.
do. And but they were constantly having in their clientele, they were constantly recognizing that they needed someone
Mm-hmm.
to do this type of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, I had decided I wasn't ready to hang up the
Mm-hmm.
shingle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called Rob and we met for coffee, and so here I am.
I love it.
And We offer a multitude of different services based
Mhm,
on what is needed
mhm,
by a family-owned business. We offer executive coaching where we help them through being a better
mhm,
leader. And also sometimes that coaching is towards how do I set my company up
mhm,
to be acquired? How do I
mhm,
set my company up to be, passed down to the next
mhm,
generation? And so that executive coaching is very thorough, lasts
mhm,
about 6 weeks. We do succession planning
mm,
where
mhm,
that is in depth. You know, how do I get to the point where
mhm,
I make the determination?
mhm.
Who is going to
Right.
succeed me and how does that turnover need to
Mhm,
take place?
mhm,
And that's a 3 to 5 year project
mhm,
on the part of the company.
mhm,
They don't have to have Ferguson
mhm,
Alliance along their side for the
mhm,
3 to 5 years, but many of our clients do.
mhm.
We have some clients that have been with us for 20 years,
Wow. Just
you know,
that's
and
part of that continuous improvement.
it is, absolutely. And so I misspoke, 14 years. Rob's
Ah,
only had this particular business. He's worked with the same
mhm,
companies for 20 years, but in
mhm,
a different role.
mhm,
So then we also offer strategic planning.
mhm.
It's something that strategic plans are not, sometimes they'll do a strategic plan that goes to the shelf.
Mhm.
It doesn't do any good unless you
Right.
implement.
Mhm,
And now we help with the valuation of the companies if they want to sell. And we offer a person who can go in and be a fractional CFO or a
mhm,
fractional
mhm,
CEO. I can serve the role as a fractional COO.
mm,
And
mhm,
so we offer that for companies who need a little help.
mhm,
And then the last thing that we do is what Jan Southern does is continuous improvement and
mhm.
process optimization. So that's a long list, but hopefully I didn't forget
Mhm,
anything off of the list. And so that's Ferguson Alliance, and you can find us. You can find me on LinkedIn under
mhm,
Jan Southern. You can also find Ferguson Alliance at ferguson-alliance.com,
mhm,
and we have all of our materials up there, and you can book a session with
mhm,
us for free anytime you
mhm,
want. And anytime you just need a little boost, and
mhm.
give us a call, and we'll find somebody that can help you.
I love it. And your website has great resources. And so I encourage folks, even if this is, something that you're thinking, down the road, go ahead and check it out and see. Well, Jan, this really has been so much fun. Like I said, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I would say my first final thought is start continuous improvement the day that you open your business. That would be one of the thoughts. And the other one is continuous improvement is only an extension of process improvement, but it's done every day. Every day that you show up to work, you should be looking for a way to make your job better.
I love it. Well, I have been having so much fun speaking with Jan Southern of Ferguson Alliance. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.